Hey guys, before we deep dive into Jack the Ripper, check out our new channel, Thrive, for families dealing with substance abuse. We've got a lot of great information up there for you. So make sure you check it out. We'll put a link up there. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. John Kelly, profiler, and welcome. Welcome to today's show. Jack the Ripper, profiled and identified as Aaron Kosminski. Well, he's got our vote. Let's see. Thank you so much for purchasing my book. I can't thank you enough. Discovering Lazarus, the good, the bad, and the ugly of John Kelly. Appreciate all your positive and kind feedback. And thank you so much. We really appreciate it. If you like what we're doing today, please subscribe. Please shoot us a like if you like it. And we're interested in your comments. We want to hear from you. I want to know what you think about today's show, because we're going to be talking about Aaron Kosminski as being Jack the Ripper. We don't know for sure, but he is a person of interest that's been talked about. So we'll see how he falls in line here with the profile we did 4 years ago. This disclaimer is very important. This is only my opinion based on the allegations that have been out there in the news and the other media. Okay, bottom line. So we won't know because he's dead. Aaron Kosminski's dead, and we'll have to wait and see if he's proven guilty or can't be proven guilty in a court of law. So we'll see where they go with this. At least I don't think he can, although they say they have DNA that matches now. And it's old DNA. So we're going to see where we're going with this. Someone identified as Kosminski, was seen in the area around one of the crime scenes. But the person who witnessed them wouldn't snitch and, talked to law enforcement. But he talked to law enforcement kind of off the record and said he wouldn't go into court and, snitch on Kosminski. Minsky, I'm sorry, I get it mixed up. You have to understand that's how I believe law enforcement got his name and how law enforcement got onto this guy and how he became a person of interest, a major person of interest in the Ripper murders, talked about by various law enforcement officials. Okay. The latest news with the DNA being found on the Shaw. I mean, I really believe that, that kind of ices it for us based on our previous profile of 4 years ago. And I'll get into exactly why. In our profile, we said the Ripper worked in a slaughterhouse because I had to believe the guy had to learn somewhere, somehow, how to work with a lot of blood, feel comfortable working in blood, how to operate on people, cut into people, how to take out various organs. I mean, how would he know how to do that unless he was in the medical field? And I really couldn't buy into, the whole thought of this guy being a medical surgeon showing up on scene and, slaughtering these women and taking their body parts. Well, I was in for a surprise as I started to deep dive into Kosminski, because Kosminski worked as a barber, correct? But did you know back in those days they were known as barber surgeons? And the reason they were known as barber surgeons is because they also did surgeries. Yeah, minor surgeries along with cutting hair. They were known as barber surgeons. There was no school. There was no official degree. There was training, and the training was usually done through an apprenticeship and was done by a mentor. And they grew up working with a mentor and learning this profession. Okay. So back in the day, you had barbers that could not only cut your hair, but could do surgery, minor surgery, and also treat other illnesses. Now, this is important. Treat other illnesses. Check out barber surgeon. Okay. So, since there was no schooling back in that day, where did they learn about the anatomy and getting into, you know, human beings and being able to operate on human beings? My thinking was they had to learn to cut somewhere. Because if we look at Jack the Ripper, don't forget he knew about the arteries, which a barber would know, on the neck that had to be that he cut, right? But then he started taking out other body parts, right? How would he know where they're at? How would he know how to get to them? He had to get to them pretty quick. How much time did he have, right? So I believed it had to be somebody that was used to skinning animals, cutting up animals, something like that. Where else would it come from? But here, barber surgeons, okay, which Aaron Kosminski was, all right, they ended up working on not only animals and learning how to dissect animals, but also they were given cadavers, and part of their training was operating and cutting up various cadavers. Check it out. Check the history of barber surgeons back in the day. I think you're going to be very interested. And Aaron Kosminski was a barber surgeon. Also, I knew Aaron Kosminski was diagnosed as being a paranoid schizophrenic. Well, yeah, there's a number of serial killers that were paranoid schizophrenic. There's no question about it. But what you have to understand is most paranoid schizophrenics are not organized and structured. All right. And this guy was a barber, right? So, and then I found out as a barber surgeon. But you got to understand there has to be a certain amount of organization, and you have to be organized to be a barber, and especially if you're going to be a surgeon as well. So I think somewhere in there, and before he really went over the edge, Aaron Kosminski could have been very organized and very structured, and could have been a very good barber and and surgeon. He had the organizational skills at one time. How did he lose them? How quick did he lose them? As the paranoid schizophrenia got worse, I don't know. We'll see what you guys think about it. Again, don't forget with serial killers, you've got two types. You've got organized versus disorganized. All right. And I have to believe that, he was definitely organized. Just because somebody's paranoid schizophrenic doesn't mean they don't have organizational skills or not, or aren't organized. Take a look at another paranoid schizophrenic who I'm sure you will be familiar with, right? Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, okay? Extremely organized, was a professor at a college, okay? I mean, I think he was taken into Harvard when he was 16 years old. The guy was a genius, all right? But the Unabomber was diagnosed as being a paranoid schizophrenic and was extremely organized until it got to the point where, the illness got much, much worse. Then we got to know about the area, you know? Serial killers usually know something about their area, all right? And I have to believe the Ripper knew the area pretty well, you know? And Aaron Kosminski lived in that area. So he did know that area pretty well. There's no question about it, you know? Paranoid schizophrenics are known for having hallucinations. And, these are commands that they're getting from a higher power or a different entity or the devil or whatever. But these are auditory hallucinations that usually drive these paranoid schizophrenics to kill. Okay. Thus, they become serial killers. Right. Now, also, I have to look at the Ripper, the way he evolved in the murders. This is a little rare to me that somebody goes straight to murder, straight to killing, straight to slicing and dicing and cutting up people without having to work up to that. And I would wonder if Aaron Kosminski didn't have some altercations with prostitutes. Like Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, he had an altercation with a prostitute that he got arrested for, trying to beat her up and choke her years before, he got arrested and found guilty of being the Green River Killer. The point I'm trying to make is that usually there's some kind of friction or altercation with prostitutes to begin with. Now, we know Aaron Kosminski really didn't like sex workers. He really didn't like prostitutes. I mean, there's a lot out there on that if you want to deep dive and search for it. And he didn't like women in general, but he really didn't like sex workers. Now, that starts to make me wonder and make me think of, back in the day and him being a barber surgeon, what other illnesses he treated. And doing the deep dive on it, I realized that some of the other illnesses he treated had to do with rashes. Now, I started to think about, sex workers, rashes, and venereal disease. And I'm thinking about what sexual diseases definitely displayed a lot of rashes because, again, barber surgeons dealt with rashes and other diseases. So syphilis definitely had a lot of rashes that went along with it. And guess what? Syphilis was the venereal disease, the sexual disease of the time out there. Major, major disease. Syphilis can really affect you in many different ways and eventually kill you. Okay. Affected Al Capone, right? So, you got to understand that he saw a lot of this as a barber surgeon, working in Whitechapel. No question in my mind about it. And I think this may have led to his hatred of sex workers, even if he didn't have an altercation with sex workers. The other thing we focused on in the profile was the primary visual intake system. Don't forget, we did this profile 4 years ago, okay? Before any DNA came back on Aaron Kosminski. You got to understand that we're looking at a person here who had to be very, very visual and a very strong primary visual intake sense and had to be very organized and structured. Because you got to understand that, if you have a guy that can turn around and not only kill a sex worker, but carve her up and take the organs that he's looking for, and who's going to be focused on sexually enjoying necrophilia, this person has to be very, very visually and oriented and very structured to do this in the allotted time and to take these organs with him and, to ingest them. We put it right out there 4 years ago. You'll see it on our profile. We'll put a link up there for you that this was a very visually structured serial killer that was a sadistic psychopath and cannibal who was focused on, enjoying necrophilia. I mean, that was his fetish, okay, back in the day. Aaron Kosminski, yes, he was a paranoid schizophrenic, went off to an insane asylum. Finally got to the point where he was insane. I think he even threatened his sister with a knife. That's something I read. And so he went off to an asylum. And when he went off to the asylum, the Ripper slings stopped. All right. Now, in my realm, when somebody stops this type of killing, when a serial killer stops this kind of killing, it's not that they're doing it to change their ritual. This type of killer doesn't change that ritual. That ritual is pretty much right there. This is their fantasy. This is their fetish. I mean, the ritual is definitely their signature. Okay. But when Kosminski went off to the asylum, it stopped, right? All the murders stopped, the ritual stopped. So, that says something to me too. And another reason why Kosminski gets my vote. I guess we'll never know because he won't be able to go in front of a court of law, right? No, no doubt about it. The other thing that I think is really important for you to understand is the best predictor of present and future behavior is past behavior. All right, and I'm sure a lot of you know that and agree with it. And so I want to bring up this whole thing about paranoid schizophrenics who have been bloodletters. All right, and I want to bring up David Berkowitz, serial killer from New York that shot the victims, the couples on Lover's Lane. Real bloodletter, a lot of blood in those scars when he got done with his 44 caliber pistol, right? Then we have Ed Gein, serial killer and really sick paranoid schizophrenic from Wisconsin who was digging up graves and making lampshades and curtains and other things out of skin that he was getting off his cadavers' bodies. He was skinning them and weaving the skin into, like I said, lampshades and other things. Then you also have Herbert Mullen. Herbert Mullen was a paranoid schizophrenic out of California, and he was a major serial killer. And the reason he was killing people is because he heard the voices and he was getting the commands, like they all get pretty much. He believed they were coming from God. And he believed that God told him that as long as he killed people, there would be no more earthquakes in California. So Herbert went around killing people and became a very bad serial killer because he wanted to stop the earthquakes in California. All right. So that's what the voices told him to do. Then we have Richard Chase, the vampire of Sacramento. Think about him. You want to talk about a bloodletter? This guy, wasn't only stabbing and cutting up people, he's drinking their blood. Okay. So again, he was diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic as well. The point I'm trying to make to you is that paranoid schizophrenics who are serial killers can have a certain part of them that is organized. So you understand that because a lot of people believe, well, it couldn't have been Aaron Kosminski because if he was paranoid schizophrenic, he couldn't possibly be, so sophisticated and organized to commit the murders in Whitechapel and be Jack the Ripper. But then take a look at Peter Sutcliffe from England. Peter Sutcliffe, you have to understand, was a very, very bad serial killer. And ironically, he was the Yorkshire Ripper from England. Okay. And so, he stabbed and killed a number of women as well. And again, he was a mission oriented killer who really wanted to get rid of a lot of sex workers. He had a lot of hatred for sex workers. So I hope you learned something from this. I hope you check out our profile from 4 years ago. You'll see we had some pretty good hits on there. Most importantly, thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate you. Really appreciate your support. Please take care of yourself. We live in a very violent world. Please stay on your toes. And until next time, God bless. And thank you so much once again for tuning in.